Well, welcome back into the studio. I am so excited to finally be able to introduce to you this collaboration with Tina Walker over at StencilGirl Stencils, who is the collaboration editor for StencilGirl. And there were 3 of us additional artists who participated. And what we each did was create a journal using papers that Tina had created, had hand dyed. And so when I created this art journal, I created it specifically with those in mind. And the name of the collaboration was Put a Bird on It. And so we were each to use a stencil on 3 pages. And so what I'm going to show you is how those were created. So these are the inside pages. They're all these just absolutely lovely, luscious, different types of papers that Tina had hand dyed. Many of them are vintage and just gorgeous. If you have had an opportunity to take a dyeing class with Tina, I was able to do that quite a few years ago with her and Dee Dee Catron, and it was just a wonderful class. Learned so much there. So these are the pages. If you want to see the making of this journal, I will link at the very end and also down below in the description box how I made this journal. It's a 3-parter, and yeah, so I encourage you to check that out if you're so interested in how that all came to be. What we are going to take a look at now is the collaboration itself. So we each were charged with choosing one stencil to use on all 3 pages, and then furthermore, we then mailed our journals off to the next person in line. And then each of them had their own stencils, and they were going to work on the same 3 pages using their stencils. And then once all that creation was done, then we were to get our journals back and finish those pages. So the stencil that I chose was this stencil. Let me get a piece of paper so you can see it better. This is S321 and called Whimsical Waves, and I will have a link to it down below. So this is a StencilGirl stencil, and so you can see where I've used it also on the cover. If you want to see how this was made, I have a Technique Tuesday that's coming out next month, I believe. Where I will be working on stencil layering for focals, and I've used it on the back as well as on my 3 pages. So what I'm going to show you is what I did to my 3 pages. So that's coming up next, and then once we're done there, I'm going to show you how each of the other artists worked on my pages with their stencil, what their stencil was, etc. And then we'll come back and we'll finish those pages into completed art journal pages. So let's take a look at how I initially put down what I did to my pages with this stencil. Alright, so now I'm going to start working in the inside of this journal that we've created. And I need to choose 3 pages, so I'm going to do this spread, so these 2 pages plus another one. So I'm starting with this one first, the layout, and I wanted to do some light collage. Now, this is not going to end up being very light, but I had this idea to use varying size of circles, and I've chosen a variety of different papers that were just under papers and some vintage text papers, and punched a variety of sizes out. And that's where I'm going to get started as I'm going to start to collage this down, probably push a little bit of it back with some gesso and go from there. So, and then once I'm done with, and I've added the stencil that I am going to be using for this project, then I will go on to the next page and do that page and add the stencil that I'm going to be using, and then I will ship this off to the next person in the collaboration and wait to receive their journal, where I will add my same stencil to their 3 pages. All right, now that that is dry, I'm going to do 2 things. I have a little rip on this page that I'm going to add some paper tape to. It'll be a thin way that I'll get some texture, so maybe I'll just go through and add some throughout this. I have lots of media that's going to be going over the top. This stuff is super sticky, so I'm not really worried about it. So now I'm going to come in with some gesso, and I'm going to put a little off to the side and go in with my fingers and add that. Alright, I've gotten this dry, and now I'm going to come through and just trim down the excess. Okay, so let me introduce you to the stencil that I'm going to be using for this project. This is Whimsical Waves, and I'm going to be using this on all 3 of the pages in my book, and then all 3 pages in each of the other people's books. And they each will have their own stencil that they've chosen from StencilGirl Products, and they will be using that on the same 3 pages in all the collaborators' journals that they've created. And so this is what I'm going to use, and I am going to add paint to this. And I am going to go dark to light. I'm going to use 2 different colors. I'm going to come in with this Amsterdam King's Blue. Grown to really like it. I bought this little sample to see if I would, and I really like it. So I'm going to come in with that first. Go. And then I'm going to come in with this Arctic in Lucas. And now I'm going to come back in with white, and I'm just going to use gesso. Now I have to choose another page because we're to work out of 3 pages. So I want to do something different. And I think I'm going to work on this page here. And I think I'm going to come back in with some of this paper tape. It's light, it offers me some texture, and I'm really digging on it. So that's what I'm going to do. Kind of layer some of this up. I like how you can still see the writing through. All right, got a little carried away there. That's all right. So I'm going to come in with some stencil and some archival ink and add my stenciling, just real subtle and a nice hint. I like it. I love the original color of the dyeing that Tina did on this page. So my pages are ready to go. So I'm gonna mark them with the flag. They know where my pages are. And get this ready to be sent off to Tina for its next version, the 2.0 version coming from Tina. So that's what you're gonna see next. All right, so these are the first 2 pages that have, you can see in here where my stencil appears kind of in the background. And I am going to create an art journal page, a completed art journal page from what I have here. So this is where I'm going to start. I have a wonderful background already really, and I just love that gold. That's such a beautiful gold. I got to figure out what gold that is. So I'm going to get started with this page and pull in and kind of finish this off. So one of the challenges we were charged with was the theme, which is put a bird on it, and so each of these pages need to have a bird on it. And so I am going to use this stencil by StencilGirl Products called 3 Crows, and what I'm going to start off with is I'm going to make a skin of these crows. I am using a plastic, this is one of those disposable cutting boards. It has a matte side and a shiny side. I want to make sure that I'm applying this to the shiny side. I have my stencil here. Now I have my mixture. This is a mixture of Power Smooth and Universal Medium in gray. And I've mixed those 2 together and created this. It's not really a paste, it's more of a slurry. It's thicker because of the powder. And I'm just going to use all of these all these images. Make sure I get one that I like. And I am applying this pretty thick. And when you're working with Universal Medium, you want to make sure that you're using plastic and that you get your stencil into the water right away. And I'm going to pull this and set this aside to dry. And then with this, I'm going to lay it back down, and what's left on there, I'm just going to pull through it. And it's already starting to dry. The nice thing about Universal Medium, if you use plastic tools and you accidentally let it dry, it will peel off. And just get the excess off, and then I have some images to work with. All right, so I have let these dry overnight. So, and I just wanted to show you that this is how easy the Power Tex is to get off of plastic. It just simply lifts up. Now, my fears are that this cracks real easily, so I need to be really gentle with these to make sure they don't crack. So I am hoping they don't. Now this is a lot thicker than this is in here, so hopefully that will help with that. So you just kind of lift, you can see how it's just coming off, but I don't want to bend it, so I don't, yep, and there it came right off. So that is a skin. It's not an acrylic skin, which is something you may have heard of. And just to be clear, this is the first time I've ever made skins using the PowerTex Universal Medium along with the Power Smooth. So now that these will work, I am going to start to create on the first of my 3 pages. When I saw this page for the first time after everyone had done their creating on it, I kind of had this image of this crow walking around the globe of one of these circular motifs that were on here from, I think this was from Andrea's work that she did, her stencil. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out here, is just where I want to place this crow skin. And I decided to attach that with this Barely Arts glue. It does a really good job. This is pretty thin. And I felt like that Barely Arts, I could get it into all the little areas of his feet and the feathers and get right up to the edge nicely, because I really wanted to get a good adhesion to the page. I could have also used PowerTex Universal Medium to glue it down, but I was a little worried about it spooging out. I do have it in transparent, but it would show after it dries as a slightly like a satin almost look to it. if it did splooge out a bit. So I did go with this. This ended up working very well. And I wanted to create some shadow under him. So I come in with this watercolor pencil in Scorched Timber. I do also come in a little bit here with some Stabilo all in black just to pump it up a little bit more in certain areas. I'm getting ready to add a quote, and I pulled out this fabric because I had a lot of similar colors into it, although muted, and I really loved the kind of mystic kind of feel to that fabric, and I felt that really went well with what was happening on the page already. So I wanted to pull off some of this, get the edge really ragged to put my quote onto that fabric. So I'm getting that prepared. This piece of fabric, I used a Liz Constable technique, which I think is in her book, Died and Gone to Heaven. And it's a really fun piece of fabric. And so I have gotten that all cut down, and I'm going to do some distressing on the edges of the actual quote itself. And the quote reads, "Our minds are like crows. They pick up everything that glitters, no matter how uncomfortable our nests get with all that metal in them." It's a quote by Thomas Merton, and I thought that was perfect. So I've pulled out my little charms and metal pieces box to see if I can't find something that will go with that gold in the background that from when Dee Dee put down her stencil, and see if I can't find something that will glitter and be interesting to that crow to have. All right, I am back working on page 2 of the journal, and it's the page to the right of this other one, so I kind of want to tie it in a little bit, but have it be its own entity. So it's definitely got some different colors on it. There is some crossover, just a bit. but I want to, there's a lot going on here. I really like this image, so I want to play off of that. So that's where I'm going to get started on this page. So I'm bringing more of that distress ink and scorched timber to accentuate some of the texture that's in there. As you may or may not recall, I added a bunch of paper tape to this, and so I want to kind of catch some of that, get some darkness going towards the center of that circular pattern. And going off of that left-hand page, it was my thought to bring in a whole bunch of different threads and kind of create some of what is talked about in that quote. And I have that circular pattern. I'm just going to build off of that with these threads. And I'm just really gathering a variety. There's some that in here that's from burlap, some just regular thread, some cotton. There's even a few pieces of tinsel like thread that have some glitteriness to it. And I'm going to play with those and create almost a nest, if you would. Once again, I'm going to adhere one of the crow pieces, crow skins on top of this circular area, like it's coming down into its nest. And I'm going to do it the same way I did on page 1. This time I'm using the Barely Arts glue to do the fine parts, the feet, the feather, the beak, but I am going to come in with some Fabri-Tac to adhere the rest of it, just to test it out and see how it does with this skin. And once I get that added, I'm going to come in and do some shadows exactly the same way I did on the first page, using the Stabilo All and the Scorched Timber watercolor pencil along with my water brush. And then I had the idea to come in with some more little trinkets like a crow would find glittering in rubbish, etc. Wherever they're flying, they catch a hint of it and bring it back to their nest. So that's what I did. I went through my little charm and metal pieces container and pulled out a few things I could stick into his nest. I decided I needed to bring in some of the goldness that was from the first page, and so I'm coming in with some Marabou art spray in gold just to add a little bit of fleck of gold that could be found in the background. All right, I feel like those two pages go well together. They stand alone nicely. I feel like I need to use some of that fabric here though. So I'm gonna add some of that to this as well. There we go. That kind of ties it in a little bit better with this. The sprinkles kind of pull in what this is. I didn't want to go too overboard, but there's a smattering of them. And of course the shiny glittery pieces in this goes also with the quote. So I'm pleased with that. All right, it's time to work on our third and final page. And I'm going to get this masked off. And then this time I'm going to come in with a little bird I created from the StencilGirl stencil, Tall Birds. And what I did was I reversed the stencil and then went through it with a slurry of Easy 3D Flex by PowerTex and Blue Universal Medium, both by PowerTex. And I did that on paper, and that's this little guy. And I'm going to work on incorporating him into this page. I'm going to start off by giving him a little bit of dimension. I'm pulling in some archival ink and prize ribbon and using a dauber just to add some shadowing or color differentiation on him so he looks a little bit more dimensional. And I'm going to get him mounted onto this piece of fabric. This is an old hanky that I did some rust and iron dyeing on. And I felt like it went really well with that page, background colors. And I'm going to get him attached to that. I am going to come in with some more threads and put those behind him on top of the fabric, and then find a quote. This is a quote that I saw when I was looking for a quote for the first page and decided that this needed to go on this page. It just felt really true. So I'm going to get that cut down and edged up with some Distress Archival ink. I felt like the words were kind of blending in. I wanted them to stand out, so I decided to mount them on some black cardstock and then adhere it to the page. That'll also pull in the black from the marks that Dee Dee Catron made, the black ones, as well as the threads. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come watch this video. I do appreciate it. Down below in the description box, I will have a link to the blog post where you will find links to the other collaborators' artwork.